Thank you, Jen. Okay. Um, so I'm Celeste Landry. I've been to all these meetings. I'm the facilitator for this group. I live in Boulder. I was one of the founding members of the Boulder County League's voting methods team. And I guess I'm all in now. So here I am. Um, I had a couple of questions for people. Barbara, I think you emailed me about going to the Fair Vote Canada PR 101, and I wondered if you made it to that event. It sounds like Betsy made it to that event.
I did not.
Maybe next month. They have it almost every month. Laura, you mentioned a friend that did simulations. Do we know that person?
I don't think so. It's someone that I know from college who currently lives in California, but I would be happy to contact them and get their paper if that's of interest.
Okay.
That is very much of interest.
There are a lot of people who do simulations, some of them way more complicated than others. Nikki Case has done a really easy introductory kind of one, and we can probably put that in the chat. And then there's somebody with Chinese sounding name who's done much more complex ones that the star voting people in Oregon like to reference. Um,
Don't
and
don't forget don't forget Jen.
don't
Uh,
forget what?
I've got a paper up on archive, which is actually at best a draft, but hope to revise soon on simulating what the first Alaska IRV election might have looked like under approval or star voting.
And she works with a professor at Colorado College who's been doing the same thing, and they were very instrumental in the Y and Z redistricting process.
And Tony was one of the leaders behind getting it on the ballot and getting it passed. Um, so I had a question for the approval voting party folks. Are you running anybody in the special election for CD4? Just curious.
Not at this time, no.
Okay.
I think my understanding, I thought, was that it would be only Republicans in that race.
No.
But
The
okay,
Democrats get to put one, the Republicans, I think every party gets to put one up there.
we'll see what happens.
Okay. And then Mary.
If I could just tag on to that for a minute, at 6 o'clock, I'm trying to figure out what to do because there's actually another Zoom talking about that filling that vacancy from the Democratic perspective and what the steps in that process are going to be. And I've got a link to sign on to it at 6 o'clock, and I don't know whether to stay or go, but just to let you know that they're putting their process together right now.
So it's not too late, Frank, is what we're saying.
Well, I'm not 100%, but he'd need to jump on it quick, I think.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Mary, I had a question for you, which is the Ken Buck, when he stepped down, he said that he wanted to work on election reform.
Yes.
It was a vague enough term that we don't know what that means, but I wonder if the closest active league in election reform is the Larimer County League. And if you all have talked about it, the state league action and advocacy people have talked about, finding out what he wants or, inviting him to events or something like that. So maybe you could bring it up with the Larimer County League.
I mean, I'd be happy to, but I kind of think this might be a better place for him. So he does seem very interested. He's made a number of public statements about that. And when I look at the calendar for around the state and around Larimer to sign up for meetings like this one, I've not seen anything for a while. I think it's got a different name. It's not called alternate. It's called something else in Larimer. And I can go in and I can look at the website and see if I can spot the next meeting and what it's called. But
Okay.
this, so far for me personally, this has been a better place to go. And so I would kind of tend to think this is where he should be, but I can research that further and see if I'm right about that.
If you would just touch base with Larimer,
Sure.
Making Democracy Work people, and ask them what they know, that would be great. We can, as the state league, invite him to be involved with us. One of the things he did mention was the Kent Theory initiatives, which we'll talk about. And we are attending those coalition meetings. They tend to be the campaign meetings more than the development of the initiative meetings. But anyway, we are talking to the folks there. And then we have another task force, the elections task force, which may be of more interest. So maybe Karen Sheik and I were the leaders of those two task force. Maybe we should send them a joint email invitation.
I think this is Tony, and I think to begin with, it'd be very interesting to know what he means by reform. Okay. And I think an invitation might be a good thing.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay. Anybody else have any questions? I've been peppering people with questions since I heard the introductions. And Mary, if you have to leave early, we'll totally understand. This is a big deal election.
Well, what I might do is try to multitask and watch on my phone and see how far along they are, if they're just still letting people into the meeting, and see how long I can delay before I have to switch over. So I think I might just keep an eye on it. But
okay.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead back to sharing my screen. Do you see meeting introductions here? Okay. Let's go to the next screen then. So news and events, that are happening. A big deal thing is that the U.S. Fair Representation Act, this is, of course, a congressional act, will be introduced on Friday. There'll be a virtual briefing at noon. I got an email about it. I signed up for it. We'll see if I'll try to attend it, but there's also the title board meeting that day. And what the U.S. Fair Representation Act would do is it would elect the U.S. representatives using the proportional form of RCV, and it would elect the senators using the instant runoff voting form of RCV. So Joe Neguse is a sponsor for it. I would love to see all the representatives in Colorado be sponsors of it. I'd love to see it become law, but we'll see what happens. This is something, there's a national lobby corps, and we can talk to them about this also. This U.S. Fair Representation Act, at least the previous versions, have aligned with the 2020 position that the National League adopted on electoral systems and voter representation. Any questions on the FRA, the Fair Representation Act?
I'm sorry, it's Tony again, and I don't know how many people are new, but if you want, Celeste has mentioned the positions a couple times, and if you want to get the positions, all of them from the national level, you can get a copy of Impact on Issues. And the state has one as well, Positions for Action. And that's what we base our lobbying and education processes are.
And a shout out to Tony, who has been the main person in Colorado to work on impact on issues for our state. So thank you, Tony.
If this bill passes, does that mean congressional districts would be abolished?
It means we would have multi-member congressional districts. So Colorado has 8 districts right now. They would probably be consolidated into 5 and 3. They prefer not to have 4 and 4 because you tend to get 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, and they want to have some tiebreaker kind of thing. So they, in a state like California, they would have, all 5 except for whatever's left over, all 5-member districts. It wouldn't, in a state like Wyoming, there would just be 1, and they would not use proportional representation because you can't use proportional representation to elect 1 person. So they would use instant runoff voting.
When your proportions are 100% and 0%.
Right, right. Okay, any other questions on the FRA? There was big news. You may have seen it in the league newsletter that said that the Greeley-Weld County lawsuit has been resolved and the county commissioners will have to redraw district maps. The House Bill 21-1047 said that counties have to set up districts to elect their commission. They have to set up, sorry, let me start over again. They have to set up independent redistricting commissions to draw the district maps, and they have to have a public process, and Weld County did not do all that. So they got sued by LWV and the Latino coalition there. And it kept being, they were waiting and waiting and waiting, and maybe they resolved it behind the scenes without going to court, because last I heard they were just waiting for people to they didn't have a trial date, so I guess somehow it got resolved. And nobody hears from Weld County, I don't think. Okay, moving on, the PR 101 webinar by Fair Vote Canada. This is what Betsy McBride attended last Friday. And they have some excellent movies. And we've talked about having a movie night and watching them and stopping it when people have questions, but we haven't gotten around to that. It's kind of busy with initiative season and the General Assembly in session right now. And lots of elections. Okay, let's move on to the next thing. Our next meeting is scheduled for April 16th. I hope everybody can make it. If not, we have changed the date in the past. Neil McBurnett is not at this meeting because he is at the EVN conference, Election Verification Network, as is, somebody from our Secretary of State's office and various other elections people. He's on a panel or running a panel about auditing ranked voting contests, which is a hot topic, as we'll see in the rest of the meeting. So I think he will be speaking next month about that, and then we'll still have initiatives and bills to talk about.
April 16th is a Tuesday.
Okay, let's not meet on April 16th. Let's meet on April 15th instead.
Okay.
That's tax day. Okay, that's the day I have written down for real in my, okay. Thank you for catching that. April 15th, we'll fix that. And anything else people, well, we can talk about things today, but if there's something else, just let us know if you want something on next month's agenda. So the big thing on this month's agenda is this idea about a bill to enable proportional representation in Colorado's cities and counties. And this was a big topic of discussion at last month's meeting. And now a bill draft has been written. It was written specifically in response to the County Commissioner Bill 1177. Our league wanted to add the option to allow county commissioners to be elected using a proportional voting method. The bill turned out to be controversial enough that there wasn't any motivation for them to worry about proportional voting at all. The bill had 2 strike below amendments, which means the entire bill was rewritten. Strike below means everything below the "be it enacted" clause is cut and a whole new bill is written. And this happened twice during second reading, which is very unusual. I'm finding that there are more and more amendments during second reading and third reading. Second reading and third reading are in the House or the Senate chamber with all of the legislators there. Usually amendments should, in my opinion, be done ahead of time in the committees or even before it gets introduced, and it should be in the original bill. But that's not what happened in this case. And so anyway, our amendment didn't get any traction. But because that bill died on the House floor, we can write our own bill exactly the way we want it. And so there is a draft bill written. It has 3 purposes. 2 of them are important. One is a cleanup. So the first purpose is along the lines of what we were trying to do with House Bill 1177. Specifically, it would add an option to elect multiple county commissioners at large in a single contest using single transferable vote, which is also known in our statutes as proportional ranked voting. It's allowed by our statutes for cities, but not for counties. So we would need to allow it for counties and then add it as an option. And this doesn't make any requirements on anybody, any counties, but it does make a requirement of the Secretary of State's office. And the Secretary of State was forced to promulgate rules for the single winner version, instant runoff voting, because Boulder passed instant runoff voting, and then the Secretary of State somebody had to make some rules about it if the county was going to run it. And so they were forced to do that. But even though single transferable vote is in the state constitution, there are no rules on how to conduct the logic and accuracy tests, how to do the post-election audits, how to do tabulation, how to do reporting, how to do canvassing. So this bill is work for the Secretary of State. But it's not work for the counties. It may make no change at all. The counties don't have to adopt it. And some counties wouldn't, probably. We could try to make it a mandate. I don't think there's any desire in the legislature right now to make it a mandate. And then the third purpose, as I said, is a cleanup. It would just standardize the number of signatures needed for a county commissioner candidate petition. You can change from 3 to 5 or 5 to 3 commissioners if you're a big county. And when they changed the signature requirements in 2019 in House Bill 1278, and I say we because I worked with the sponsor on this bill, on this part of this bill, we forgot to do it for the section of statutes that allows you to increase or decrease the number of county commissioners. So those are the 3 purposes of this draft bill. Does anybody have questions about these 3 purposes? One person I showed the bill to said, why are we limiting it to proportional ranked voting? Why don't we allow all these other kinds? And another person said, we're not writing this bill for us. We're writing this for the legislators, for the state, for the Secretary of State. So you can see here there's no date listed because we assume that the Secretary of State would want to weigh in on a date. So, Deborah.
Okay. So I've learned that audits are more or less difficult or easy with different kinds of voting. So I understand that this single transferable vote really is proportional representation, but how does it fare on the election audit issue?
You can audit any voting method. I mean, you can always do a full hand count audit. What we can't do with single transferable vote, and there's no progress, no thought that we're going to be able to do this in the foreseeable future, is what we can't do is risk limiting audits. So they would have to come up with a different post-election audit method, which would kind of break the Secretary of State's heart, because they really are proud, rightfully so, of their risk limiting audits. But yes, the bill exempts, the bill draft exempts single transferable vote from the post-election audits. From risk limiting audits because of that question.
And risk limiting audits are cost effective as well as accurate. I mean, they're the preferred way of doing the audit. Is that right? Or are there other ways of doing audits that are just as good?
They're efficient. They're efficient because you don't have to pull as many ballots.
Right.
So yes, they're efficient that way, but it's hard to figure out the margin, the number of ballots that you need to pull in a single transferable vote contest. So
it's more than hard. This is a mathematically unsolved problem right now.
I see.
And would somebody, if I'm the only one, we can skip this, but if other people don't know what a risk limiting audit is, I'd like to find out, please.
You want to take that, Jen, or shall I?
I actually don't know all the details. What I do know is that it basically is a statistical sampling method where once you know the reported outcome of an election, you can figure out with mathematical certainty. So say you want to guarantee to within 95% certainty that the right person won the election. It tells you how many ballots you have to pull and do it, how many ballots you have to sample in order to get that level of confidence in the result. So it gives you a very high degree of statistical confidence that the election result was correct.
That makes sense. Thank you.
And one interesting thing about it is that we don't do a risk limiting audit of every single contest. Typically, one contest per county is chosen for the risk limiting audit. And then what happens is they look at the entire ballot. So anything else on that ballot gets what is called an opportunistic audit. So they can see, and that way they can check other contests too, but there's only one target contest usually. Occasionally, if something's really close, then they may have to do a full hand count, which they had to do in Boulder County the last time around because there was 47 votes difference between two candidates, a winner and a loser. So yeah.
That makes sense too. Thank you also.
Okay. Okay. In terms of this bill, there are a number of hurdles to passage in the General Assembly. The legislative session is already halfway complete. The long bill, which is the big budget bill, is about to drop, and a lot of bills are waiting for appropriation, and so they can't get their appropriation until the long bill is settled, and then there are other bills still coming through. So it's getting crazy. It's slow at the beginning sometimes. It felt slow this year, but now it's crazy. Another thing is that there's going to be, I heard it was going to be 2 Fridays ago, an omnibus elections bill was going to drop, and that still hasn't dropped. And I heard that it may be being held up because they want to add some new laws or procedures for the special CD4 election, because I guess there's not very much in statute about that. So they want to make sure they can run the election.
Can you define that a little bit better for me? What's an ominous bill?
Omnibus just means like every election issue that, especially little ones that need to be, that they want to fix or clean up or whatever, are in that bill. In particular, this omnibus bill is probably going to take out all references of 17-year-olds who are going to be 18 in the General Assembly. Sorry, 17-year-olds who are going to be 18 by the general election. They could vote in 2020, and then Amendment 76 was passed, and they were not allowed to vote in the primary since then. So they'll probably want to take all that out. They tried to take it out last year, and we argued that they should keep it in because we have asked the Secretary of State to ask the Attorney General for a reinterpretation so that we can re-enfranchise those 17-year-olds. But I don't know what else is in that election omnibus bill, but anything that needs to be put in that the Secretary of State wants dealt with is usually in there. So another hurdle is, of course, every bill needs a legislative sponsor. The House Bill 1177 may have soured the General Assembly on county commissioner election bills. There are a couple of people I think might be good candidates for carrying a proportional representation bill. So we need to reach out to them. All of you who are from all over Colorado, if there are any of you who think your legislator might be particularly interested in this, that would be great to have that person on board. Brianna Titone actually had one of her staff members attend this meeting a while back, so she's a possibility. Chris Degree Kennedy, he carried the enabling bill for single winner instant runoff voting. So he knows about this. He didn't carry it. He didn't add on the single transferable vote because he said it'd be too big a lift. Maybe he was right. I know that proportional representation is not well understood in the legislature, and I'm not even sure legislators want it because they won under the single winner plurality system. And then also, it's considered an elevation to go from being in the General Assembly to becoming a county commissioner. You get a lot more pay. You get to stay in your county. You don't have to travel to the capital all the time. You're one of 3 or one of 5 people. You have a lot more power. So, sigh. This is where the politics come in, and where any advice or suggestions would be helpful. Frank Bennett, is Jennifer Bacon your representative by chance? I don't know if maybe he's not here still. I don't know. Anyway, she spoke in favor of better representation. People often talk in terms of better representation, and districts are easy to understand, so they gravitate toward that, but there are reasons to go toward proportional representation. and but it's a hard sell. Jen, you want to say anything more about this?
No, not really. I think you've covered it pretty well.
Okay.
Anything in particular you want me to say more about?
You did a great job at the last meeting talking about this. So if I forgot anything, I wanted somebody to speak up.
I was muted, Celeste, and the person
Oh,
mentioned Bacon is not my representative.
okay, thanks. Who is your representative and your senator?
I'm blocking on.
Hanson or anyway, okay.
I'm blocking on their names.
That's fine.
They're Democrats.
And they change a lot, so. Okay. As I mentioned before, this bill would require the Secretary of State to do some work, so it would be important if we want this bill to pass to get some support from the Secretary of State. I don't think they want to do work on this. You know, plurality is so easy, but proportional representation is so much better than plurality that I hope they would see the long-term benefits. And we would not, I mean, we could work with them on an implementation date because that would be a good thing to do um, to get their buy-in for that. So I did pass this by one person in the Secretary of State's office. I haven't seen it back yet from them, so I don't know what they think. The bill was modeled on House Bill 1071, the enabling bill for instant runoff voting, and also on House Bill 1177. So I think it's a pretty good bill. It's 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 kind of the bill I've wanted to see for a long time. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed that we can get it in the public eye, get some good positive buzz about it. The final hurdle to passage in the General Assembly is the chicken and the egg problem. Sometimes you have to get a city to mandate a kind of election first before you get the enabling legislation for it, like we did for Boulder. So it seems the wrong way to do it. It seems like you shouldn't have to be, your hand shouldn't have to be forced. If it's already in legislation that it's allowed, then they should work on the rules to make it happen, but that's not always the way it works. Okay, then, so the General Assembly passing a bill is one way to get it in. Another way to get it passed is as a citizen initiative, which the League has done. The deadline to file an initiative for this year is this week. I think you could probably get through the title board because it's not a crazy bill, but trying to collect enough signatures for this, you know, you need more than 100,000. That is difficult and expensive, and that's why people like Kent Theory can get lots of initiatives on the ballot because he can afford to pay the signature collectors. Let's see, there's a chat here.
That's just me telling you who my representative
is. Okay. And Robert Rodriguez, I think he's the majority leader now in the Senate.
Celeste, Betsy has her hand up.
Great. Betsy?
So thinking about finding someone to carry this bill and the message to wrap around it, since one of the two major parties is going to work pretty hard on the democracy question, if there can be messages or examples related to how this would make the Colorado state legislature be sort of the gold standard for increasing the representation, for citizens. I mean, this is the year that all these messages are going to be understood and supported by an awful lot of people. So just connecting some of this technical stuff to how it would strengthen democracy might be the way to find more additional support.
I love that idea. So this bill is not very ambitious. Maybe it should be more ambitious. It doesn't talk at all about the legislature. It only talks about cities and counties, and some cities have city councils, which could use this method. And Superior is considered proportional representation for their new charter that they're writing. But they were told by the county clerk, we're not going to run that election. We don't have to run that election. We don't have any rules on how to run that election. They Superior actually has some acreage in another county besides Boulder County, but no voters live there. It's like open space. So like there's a problem with running a multi-county thing which adds complexity. So yeah.
well, Celeste, I'm talking about getting this bill through the legislature first. And at the local level, you can always find ambition at the local level where people want to make their name so they can run for the next level. I just think there's a lot of good messaging that could be used to find additional legislative support to get the bill through, and then find some ambitious local politicians who want to demonstrate how much they love voting and citizens and democracy.
So we have, cities tend to be run by their city councils, and they tend to have an ideological flavor one way or the other, although there are local issues that can split that up. But counties, all the county commissioners are elected in single winner contests. And if you use proportional representation, then every big county would have Democrats and at least a Republican, or in the case of El Paso, Republicans and at least one Democrat on the county commission. And in most of the small counties, if we had proportional representation, right now there are mostly 3 Republicans serving in the county commission, and you would have 1 Democrat and 2 Republicans probably. Which, given that the state legislature has a large majority of Democrats, you'd think that might be a selling point for this bill. But it's also just an option. So, maybe if we talk to a legislator and they say we would do it if you required them to go that way, because then we could get more Democrats in these rural counties. I don't know. I think a legislative sponsor would have a lot of say in how the bill looks in the final version, because the sponsor would want it to pass and would use the democracy argument, I hope.
I love this idea, Betsy, of the democracy argument in general. And the other thing is that, I also love the idea of eventually trying to get PR for the state legislature. And if you could, actually sit people down and explain to them how this works, it would be in the Republicans' best interest to want this for the state legislature, because Colorado is trending Democrat very fast. Right now, the number of Democrats in the state legislature is out of proportion to the Democratic vote. There's a winner's bonus that typically comes from single member districts. And Republicans would likely have a larger share in the legislature under proportional representation than they will have in a just overall strongly Democratic state with single member districts.
So another idea you made me think of, Jen, is we could propose a bill to study proportional representation. You know, I mean, there was a bill before instant runoff voting and single transferable vote got, before the Ranked Voting Act or whatever it was called passed, there was a study bill the year before that, or 2 years before that. So maybe we need to go look at that bill and try to model that bill and ask the state to conduct a study. Maybe we're being too ambitious here. I don't know. My ambitions are lowering and lowering all the time.
Well, I feel like for sure there's a big educational lift that has to happen, because like you said, whether they're for it or against it, first they need to understand it. And by and large, they don't. And I actually think a study sounds like a fabulous idea. And, this task force would be a great body to offer its expertise to contribute to such a study and help educate legislators about what this could look like.
When they did this in around 2008 or 2007 or whatever, John Kafalis, who's now Larimer County Commissioner, was on it. The guy who ran for CD2, who lives in Longmont or something, or I forget his name. There are a number of names of people who are still pretty active. An approval voting guy, Jan Koch in Larimer County, was also on it. So, okay, I guess there's an action item to come out of here to consider writing a bill to study PR. So let's take that and run with it. What do you say?
Deborah's got her hand up.
Thank you for saying that. I'm not seeing these hands up.
Sorry, I only had a comment to make about this same subject, that legislatures don't know very much about a PR. So one question was, does the League of Women Voters have any kind of video on proportional representation like the one you send us to Fair Vote Canada? So I was thinking, shouldn't we have some kind of easy place for people to get information about what proportional representation is, that you could send someone a link to that they could watch?
Funny you should mention that.
Doesn't have this issue of not being a parliamentary system. I guess that's the thing I ran into when I listened to the Fair Vote Canada thing was, well, how relevant is that to us? And the second point I wanted to make was, I think it would be great to have certain people who have political clout be in this committee or attend or get involved, like Ken Buck, like you mentioned, or finding particular people that we could start including or sending information to, or getting them educated about proportional representation, and then they might influence other people. That was it.
I love that, Deborah. And we do have videos about proportional representation on our Boulder County Voting Methods Team website. And, so we could look to disseminate those more widely.
Yeah.
We have a Vicky Voter single winner one, and her sister Vera Voter for proportional representation.
Oh, great.
And then Jen and I have done some, like for the local leagues as part of a state president's meeting, as part of the league president's meeting for Colorado. Jen and I did a presentation on proportional representation also. So, yeah.
So the videos do exist that we could definitely send to anyone who might be interested.
Maybe somebody could put them in the chat too. Oh.
Yeah, I mean, I just have people here who ask me about it, and I'm thinking if there's something short and relevant to Colorado that I could send people that link to, I think that'd be great.
If it doesn't happen during
give me
this,
a minute and I'll get a good link in the chat for our voting
okay,
methods team
wonderful
page.
Okay. So this has been a great discussion. You come in with one idea and you come out maybe with a more realistic idea, which will get you to your final idea. Okay. If we're done with the bill idea, we'll move on to dueling citizens initiatives on voting methods. Tony Larson and I have been attending or listening in to the title board meetings. As a reminder, this is actually a slide from last time with a little extra information. The first step to getting a citizens initiative is you write it. And this week is the filing deadline. The next step is the Legislative Council staff, which is part of the legislature, reviews and comments on it and at a hearing. And then it goes to the title board. And the title board is composed of the Secretary of State, the Attorney General, and someone from the Office of Legislative Legal Services. They hold a hearing, and the last hearing for them to approve an initiative is April 17th. And that means clearing rehearing also, I believe, because if they say it passes single subject and then somebody files a motion to rehear and you don't have April 17th still in the future, then you're out of luck. So people are feeling the deadline. It's more than 200 initiatives have been filed, and most of them in the last 4 or 5 months. And then once you get through the title board, then there's the huge hurdle of collecting enough signatures. If it's a constitutional change, you have to collect signatures from all 35 Senate districts, and you have to get it passed by 55%. If it's not a constitutional change, I don't think you have to get it from all 35 Senate districts, but I might be wrong on that. Okay, so there are 3 different parties that have put forward citizens initiatives on voting methods. Kent Theory is the main person, and I'm going to put this, whoops. I'd like to put this in the chat so that it did. I don't know if you all saw the Westward cover article about Kent Theory and Unite America pushing for these initiatives. They are mostly modeled after Alaska's Final Four system, which means an all-candidate primary. You choose one person in that primary. Everybody gets to vote in that primary. Doesn't matter if you're Libertarian or Republican or whatever, you get to vote for any of those candidates. That's part 1, the primary. And then part 2 is a general election with the top 4 candidates vying for the seat and the voters using instant runoff voting. So some of the early initiatives did not make the single subject rule question, did not pass that question. So one of the things some of these later initiatives are doing is having an initiative that just talks about the primary and saying this only takes effect if our sister initiative about the general election also passes. And the hope is that those two as a pair can bypass the single subject rule. Almost every single one of these initiatives has gone through a rehearing if it passed the initial hearing. And Wednesday, there are like 8 more, 10 more that are going through a rehearing, plus another dozen that are going for their initial hearing. So the title board gave the lawyers a tongue lashing for throwing so many initiatives at them and basically testing their patience and not being professional about how these were written. And so the lawyers are trying to be very gentle around the title board. So those are getting most of the attention. And Ken Buck mentioned Kent theory when he was asked what he would do in the future. He said election reform. Some people may have asked him about Kent theory. He may have mentioned Kent theory. I don't know the situation. So we're watching those, and Tony and I go to the meetings on Friday. Tony, I will not be at the meeting this Friday because there's a Ledge Council staff review of some of the initiatives. So you'll be on your own for that. Thanks for holding up the fort. So there's some backlash, and so Linda Good, and I think it's Candace Stutzrium had filed 3 initiatives, but it looks like they've dropped 2 of them, and they're only keeping the one to prohibit RCV. It's a constitutional change. It's number 201. It will be heard on Wednesday for an initial hearing. And then there's another one, Ryan Ross and William Blazek. I may have that last name misspelled. They are pushing an initiative number 223, which is statutory. It's sort of a hodgepodge of many different things. I don't think either of them are attorneys. Ryan Ross is head of some group that's been around for a while, and evidently his group was the first to ever file an initiative to use instant runoff voting, something like that. Anyway, but I think they need an attorney because there are going to be a lot of questions about that initiative if it's in the same format that it was at the Ledge Council staff hearing. So things are there. This is making my head spin, maybe yours too. Any comments about the citizens initiatives? We'll keep you posted. You'll definitely keep hearing about these.
Celeste,
yeah.
I started reading the Westward article and got muddled. Can you sum it up in few words, or are you going to send me back to read it?
It says Kent Theory has a lot of money. He moved here from California. Colorado has an easy initiative process. I think it said he's interested. People say he's interested in running for governor. He's definitely interested in election reform. He worked with the league on amendments Y and Z. It may not say that in the article, but we did. It talks about some of the times his business, which was DaVita, he stepped down from that position, was sued. And I think he got cleared, but there's definitely some smudges by his name. The parties are not happy about the all candidate primary because they want to say who their candidate is. They're not happy about the all candidate primary because many of these initiatives want to do away with caucus and assembly for most of the state and federal offices, except for whatever reason, attorney general I don't know why. Sorry, district attorney. I don't know why district attorney is left out of there. I think it looks bad, and I've suggested they should include district attorney if they're doing all the other state offices. Let's see, what else does the article say? Anybody else want to chime in on this?
That the district attorney issue is that, yes, you may vote for it on a statewide basis, but it only serves localities, that person. So it's really not a statewide office as the others are.
Okay. It's still going to be a mess for the parties to have to hold just an assembly for that. But a problem that the league is concerned about is if everybody has to petition onto the ballot, it's going to be basically keeping out people who don't have the money to pay petitioners to get on the ballot. And there's going to be serious petition signature fatigue. So, I think the league is in favor of more options, not fewer, of people getting on the ballot in more ways, not limiting the way people can get on the ballot. Because if you limit people getting on the ballot, then you limit the choices that are going to be on the ballot, and we're certainly not in favor of that. So, yeah, so it's not perfect. I think we're okay with the instant runoff voting, the better voting method for the general election. And I don't know that we've really talked about the all candidate primary, but I think we're probably not in favor. I mean, we don't usually weigh in on primaries, but it sounds like we might need to for this if it's going to be on the ballot. So, yeah. I hope that answered your question. I think you should read the whole article.
Thank you, Celeste. I'll try to. Thank you.
Okay. Betsy.
So this is the system that's on the initiative in Idaho. And of course, what's already been pointed out is the minor parties, the Constitution Party, the Libertarian parties, etc., will not likely make the top four. And that's an issue with the way the open primary is structured. So.
And those small parties sued in Alaska and lost.
Mm-hmm.
And because they said, we no longer have access to the general election ballot where the final decision is being made. But, maybe a different state will come up with a different ruling. I know that the small parties like that are against this, and RCV for Colorado is against not letting the small parties be on the general election ballot. So, okay. Anything else we want to say about this? Okay. The primary election reform study. I know people are waiting on this. Idaho would like to see it, I think. Kentucky might like to see it. Minnesota might like to see it. Marcus Ogren did yeoman's work on this. Marcus goes by they. Marcus is currently in Colorado. They live in Israel usually. And I'm meeting Marcus tomorrow. We're going to work on the study draft. There are a lot of comments on the draft. I have a lot of comments, which I haven't actually put in the draft. This is okay, I'm going to stop sharing a second so I can put this chat in the Sorry, this link in the chat. I don't know how to do this. Let's see. Okay. I think I can do it now. So anybody can make comments on here. Chat. How do I get to the chat? Okay. Now you have it. I'll go back to sharing the screen. Whoops. Sorry, I'm having a hard time here. Okay. Deborah.
Um, let's see. Marcus, I worked with Marcus for a while, and there was some discussion of a, a reorganized outline and a reorganization of the reform study. If I go to this link, is that what I'm going to be looking at, or am I going to be looking at the original that I started working on?
I think all of your comments are still in there, and I agree that there needs to be a change to the organization. So I will talk to him about that tomorrow, and it'll be nice to have one-on-one conversation, back and forth, immediate, in-person discussion. So I might call you if can you maybe, yeah. I'll I think I have your phone number, so I'll call you and we can if we have some questions or if we think you
Okay.
might want to say something. Okay. And Marcus is in town till the 24th. So but Marcus has done an amazing amount of work. I mean, really it's really impressive. So okay. Not much else on that. Here's a topic that just came to my attention recently, the Colorado Voting Rights Act. Um, some there's a proposal for us to create one, and some state VRAs call out better voting methods, like proportional voting methods or semi-proportional voting methods, or even just like instant runoff voting or approval voting or whatever. I mean, I think that the reason St. Louis went to approval voting was because they wanted better representation and they wanted all the votes to count. Nobody was voting in the general election because it was already decided in the primary. So they changed their voting method to top two approval in the primary, all candidates running together, top two approval. And then now people vote in the general because it actually matters. And Jen, maybe do you want to say anything about this?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a little bit leery of a too many cooks problem because there's already a lot of different organizations attending these meetings, but the league is represented by Beth Hendricks, and also Beth Malmskog and I have been going to these meetings, and believe me, we are advocating for better voting methods, among other things. So yes, I think it's important that somebody be at the table to do this, but we are for the moment. So I feel pretty good about it.
Okay. I wonder if have you all looked at other states to see what they?
Oh yeah. So this is being spearheaded by a group at Harvard Law School called the Election Law Clinic, and they've been working on state level VRAs in multiple states. So they're very, up to speed on what's going on in different states, some that have adopted, some that have not. A bill to adopt a state level VRA in Maryland just failed. I think largely because some of the legislators felt like there wasn't really a need because, right now, the kinds of issues that a state level VRA is trying to address are not major problems in Maryland. A lot of what's going on in mostly blue states right now is to try to shore up voting rights protections, just because the Federal Voting Rights Act has been crippled in various ways by the Supreme Court, and it's kind of a matter of time, most people think, until the Supreme Court just overturns it entirely, absent some kind of action from Congress.
Happy to have you at the table.
I'm happy to have me, and Beth and I work very well together. We're very good at Beth Malmskog and I, one or the other of us will think of something, and we spent an hour talking to each other after the last meeting about this, with some ideas. So and like I said, Beth Hendricks is also attending these meetings. So the Colorado League is represented and part of the process.
A Voting Rights Act would presumably be a bill that would go through the legislature.
Yes.
And so, adding an option for proportional representation at all levels would be, maybe this is a high level aspiration.
So let me back up a little bit, because Celeste and I have talked about this. So in the Federal Voting Rights Act, a big thing that it protects is the right of, recognized minority groups to be able to elect candidates of choice. And so this is why you get lawsuits about racial gerrymandering and shutting out, minority racial groups from electoral representation. And one of the problems with the way the federal voting rights has been interpreted is that in order to bring a suit, basically the racial or language minority has to be sufficiently geographically clustered to make it possible to draw a majority minority district. And that's a very high standard. And so there are lots of places where you can't even bring a lawsuit because this very high bar for bringing a suit is not cleared unless you have a lot of residential segregation. And so some of the state level VRAs, including Colorado, are being written to modernize that requirement and to explicitly allow minority groups to bring a case, even if they are not geographically concentrated, so that you could draw a district like this. And there's a variety of remedies that a group could ask for in a lawsuit. And proportional representation is explicitly mentioned in the current draft of this VRA as one of the options that someone bringing a suit could ask for as a remedy. So that's where it is.
Yay.
Thank you.
Betsy has her hand up.
So the missing piece for the Federal Voting Rights Act, the Supremes have ruled over and over. That's why the Wisconsin lawsuit went badly. That party affiliation isn't part of the consideration for Voting Rights Act. It's just racial.
Well,
so
the Voting Rights Act of 1965 is explicitly about protecting racial and language minorities.
Right. But the Wisconsin case and some of the other cases have felt that if you can demonstrate serious differences at the state legislative level, like 50% of the registered voters are Republican, but they only get 10% of the seats, that there was some tipping point that the Supremes might finally go along with. But
well, so I can address this. So there was a lot of legislation around this, you know, before in the few years before the most recent redistricting cycle. And in 2019, the Supreme Court heard a case called Rucho versus Common Cause. And their ruling in that was that claims of partisan gerrymandering would no longer be justiciable at the federal level. So they completely shut down the ability to bring a federal case based purely on partisan gerrymandering. They did say Congress could pass a law that would make this different. And they also said that state courts are free to consider this as a state level issue. And that's what's been going on in Wisconsin right now. The Wisconsin case is actually really complicated. And for the so there was a big win in Wisconsin recently. It was about the state legislative districts, not the congressional districts. So there's going to be a big improvement in the Wisconsin state legislative districts because of this case that just came down. But weirdly enough, even though we all know it was really about racial gerrymandering, the actual legal basis that the suit challenged the old districts based on was on just a whole lot of the districts being discontiguous. And so the actual case managed to say almost nothing at all about partisan politics, but it still came out in a way that required the districts to be redrawn in a way that will be much more fair on a partisan basis.
When you say they were discontiguous, do you really mean they, like, did they cross over bodies of water, or I'm confused?
No, they were wildly discontiguous.
Wow.
I mean, some of it is because there are, you know, like in Colorado, there are some discontiguous cities, there are some discontiguous precincts. So some of it was things like that. But basically, this is a requirement in state law that districts be contiguous, and it had just been widely flouted by both parties for decades. And for whatever, this was the basis that the lawyers decided to bring the suit on. And it succeeded, and the districts have been redrawn, and a new state legislative map has been adopted in Wisconsin, and it will be in use in November. But this does not impact Wisconsin's congressional districts. This is just state legislative districts.
The congressional districts, I'm assuming, are contiguous?
They were not part of this lawsuit. I think they are contiguous. There was some attempt to, I think, revive a prior lawsuit about them, and the Supreme Court turned it down. The new Democratic justice, whose name I can never remember how to pronounce, she recused herself because she was not seated on the court for the first part of the case.
Ketanji Brown Jackson.
No, that's the Supreme Court. I'm talking the Wisconsin Supreme Court.
Got it. Whatever. Yeah.
Janet, difficult to pronounce name, that starts with a P. So that suit is not going forward. It is possible that somebody could bring a new lawsuit against the congressional districts on a variety of basis, but that has not yet happened.
Celeste? This is Stody again. We put in the redistricting proposals a sentence or two from the Voting Rights Act from US to protect Colorado if at the national level things do not go the way we would like them to go. So hopefully that will hold. One wonders when you put it up against what's happening with reproductive rights, whether those things will hold, but we'll see.
My suspicion is like I think amendments Y and Z, that aspect of them is well written, and I would expect that would hold up specifically for redistricting. But redistricting is not the only issue that the state level VRA is intended to address. It's a lot broader than that.
This has been very informational, educational. Thank you, Jen.
My pleasure.
I think we're in good hands. Jen and Beth Baumskog have been collaborators on a number of papers and things, so this isn't their first rodeo, and I'm glad you two are simpatico and great. I think that's about it. I don't know if there's any other business that people wanted to talk about. It's almost the end of our time slot anyway. Betsy.
Have we switched the normal meeting times? At one point it was the fourth Monday and now it's the third Monday?
I think it's the third Monday every month, yes.
Okay. January, February, it was the fourth.
We're flexible. Thanks for being patient and flexible.
Keep you on your toes.
It stayed Mondays for better or worse. I will be in the mountains Thursday, Friday, Saturday next month, so I'll be back in time for the meeting, but yeah. Laura, anything you'd like to say? We're happy to have you here. And
no, it's just been, as you said, very educational, and I feel like there's a lot to catch up on. Will the slides be shared with the group after the meeting, or are they available somewhere?
the slides are already available. I will put actually, if you go to our alternative voting methods webpage, you can get there from they're there with the wrong date for the next meeting, so I will have to update that. Here are the slides. Or sorry, the LWVCO Alt VM Task Force web page. And then the slides there's a link to the slides at the bottom.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
So, yeah. I guess we could stop the recording.
Right?
Oh, I see where that is now.